A ghost ship adrift, its crew vanished, and a lone sailor, stabbed in the back. Thomas Reed's final word, cargo, holds the key to a deadly secret. Was it the cunning smuggler, Jonas Blake, hiding opium in the ship's dark hold? The brutal pirate Edward Carver, with a grudge to settle? Or the mysterious stowaway, a cloaked shadow seen slipping aboard? Join Hercule Poirot as he unravels a web of deceit, betrayal, and murder on the Mary Celeste 2. In just 30 seconds, a mystery unfolds. Can you follow the clues before the truth slips away? Chapter 1. The derelict vessel. The English Channel lay under a pall of fog, thick and unyielding, as though the sea itself had drawn a veil to conceal its secrets. Hercule Poirot stood at the rail of a Coast Guard cutter, his small, fastidious figure wrapped in a heavy overcoat, his iconic mustache waxed to perfection despite the damp that clung to the air like a persistent guest. The cold bit at his fingertips, but his eyes, sharp and green as a cat's, missed nothing. Beside him, Captain Arthur Hastings, his old friend and occasional companion in detection, stamped his feet against the chill, his face a mixture of curiosity and unease. "Poirot," Hastings ventured, his voice low to avoid the ears of the Coast Guard crew. "This business is downright uncanny. A ship adrift, no crew, and a dead man aboard. It's like something out of a penny dreadful." Poirot's lips curved in a faint, enigmatic smile. "Monsieur Hastings, the world is full of stories, but it is the truth we seek. This ship, this Mary Celeste 2, it is no mere tale of ghosts. It is a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot, he will solve it." The cutter churned through the gray waters, its engine a steady hum beneath the mournful cry of gulls. The Mary Celeste 2 had been spotted that morning by a fishing trawler, drifting aimlessly some 10 miles off Dover. The Coast Guard's report was sparse but chilling. A merchant vessel, last known to have sailed from Lisbon with a cargo of wool, now abandoned save for one Thomas Reed, a sailor found dead in the captain's cabin, a knife buried in his back. No lifeboats were missing, no signs of storm or mutiny, only silence and a single corpse. As the cutter drew alongside the derelict ship, Poirot's gaze traced the lines of its weathered hull. The paint was chipped, the name Mary Celeste 2, barely legible in the dim light, a faint smell of salt, tar, and something less definable decay, perhaps wafted from the deck. The gangway was lowered, and Poirot ascended with a nimbleness that belied his age, his polished shoes clicking on the damp wood. Hastings followed, his taller frame less assured on the swaying plank. The deck of the Mary Celeste 2 was a study in desolation. Ropes lay coiled haphazardly, a bucket rolled gently with the ship's motion, and a single oilskin jacket hung from a peg, swaying like a spectral sentinel. Poirot paused, his head tilted as if listening to the ship itself. "Observe, Hastings," he said softly. "A ship does not abandon its crew. It is the crew who abandon the ship or are made to do so." Hastings shivered, though whether from cold or the eerie stillness, he could not say. But why leave one man behind? And dead, at that? It makes no sense. Poirot's eyes gleamed with that familiar spark of intellectual pursuit. "Sense, mon ami, is what we shall impose upon this chaos. A man is dead, and death, it is never without purpose. Come, let us see this unfortunate Monsieur Reed." They descended a narrow companionway, the air growing heavier with each step. The captain's cabin was at the end of a dim corridor, its door ajar. Inside, Thomas Reed lay sprawled across the floor, his weathered face contorted in a final expression of shock or pain. The knife, a heavy sailor's blade with a bone handle, protruded from his back, the blood long since dried into a dark halo on the wooden boards. The cabin itself was austere, a desk bolted to the wall, a chair tipped on its side, and a single glass overturned, its contents staining the desk with the sharp scent of rum. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved hands hovering over the scene with the precision of a surgeon. Regardless Hastings, he murmured. The knife, it is driven deep, with force. This was no accident, no sudden impulse. The killer, he meant to kill. Hastings peered over Poirot's shoulder, his practical mind grappling with the details. No signs of a struggle, though. The chairs tipped, but nothing else seems disturbed. Could he have been taken by surprise? Poirot's fingers traced the air above the glass, careful not to touch. This glass, it is most curious. It is not broken, yet it lies on its side. A man drinking alone does not knock over his glass, and then stab himself in the back. Nan, there was another here, someone who shared this rum, perhaps, or someone who watched him drink. Hastings frowned, his mind racing. The crew, then they could have mutinied, killed Reed, and fled. Poirot rose, dusting his gloves with a fastidious flick. Possible, but improbable. No lifeboats are gone, and the sea, it is not so kind as to swallow an entire crew without trace. No, Hastings, we must look to those who had reason to kill. The Coast Guard speaks of 3 possibilities: a smuggler, a pirate, and a stowaway. Each, I suspect, has a story to tell. The Coast Guard's report, relayed to Poirot before their departure, had mentioned whispers of illicit activity surrounding the Mary Celeste too. Jonas Blake, a known smuggler, had been seen in Lisbon near the ship's departure. Edward Red Carver, a pirate with a reputation for brutality, was rumored to have sailed on the vessel in the past. And then there was the stowaway, a shadowy figure, glimpsed by a dockworker, slipping aboard with a heavy bag under cover of night. Poirot's mind, like a finely tuned instrument, began to catalogue these threads, weaving them into the tapestry of the crime. He turned to Hastings, his voice crisp. We shall return to Dover, mon ami, and there we shall begin. The little gray cells, they are already at work. This ship, it is no ghost, it is a stage, and the murderer, he has left his mark. As the cutter pulled away, the Mary Celeste baited back into the fog, its secrets held tight for now. But Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for truth, knew that no secret could hide from him forever. Chapter 2. The scene of the crime. The Mary Celeste, too, loomed in the fog, its silhouette a dark spectre against the gray veil of the English Channel. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned tightly against the damp chill, descended the companionway, with the precision of a man who believed order could be imposed even upon the chaos of a crime scene. Captain Hastings followed, his boots echoing on the worn wooden steps, his face set in a mixture of determination and unease. The air grew heavier as they approached the captain's cabin, the faint temps of salt mingling with the unmistakable, metallic scent of blood. Poirot's green eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned every detail, his mind already weaving the threads of the mystery into a pattern only he could discern. The cabin door creaked as Poirot pushed it open, revealing the grim tableau within. Thomas Reed, the sole occupant of the derelict vessel, lay sprawled on the floor, his weathered face frozen in a grimace that spoke of shock or betrayal. The sailor's rough hands, calloused from years at sea, clutched at nothing, his body twisted awkwardly where he had fallen. A Nifa sailor's blade with a bone handle, sturdy and unadorned, protruded from his back, the blood having seeped into the wooden floorboards, forming a dark, irregular stain. The cabin itself was a study in austerity, a desk bolted to the wall, its surface scarred by years of use. A single chair, overturned, as if kicked aside in haste, and a glass, lying on its side, its contents of rum long since evaporated, leaving only a sticky residue and a faint, sharp odor. Poirot stepped forward, his movements deliberate, his gloved hands hovering over the scene as if to coax secrets from the very air. "Regard us, Hastings," he said, his voice low but resonant with purpose. "This is no mere crime of passion. The knife, it is driven deep, with force and intent. This was a murder most calculated. Hastings, standing just inside the doorway, peered over Poirot's shoulder, his practical mind grappling with the grim reality. He was taken from behind, then. No chance to defend himself. Poirot's lips curved in a faint, enigmatic smile. Precisement, mon ami. But observe the chair tipped, yes, but not broken. The desk, it is undisturbed, save for this glass. There was no struggle, no chaos of a fight. This suggests familiarity, perhaps. The killer, he was someone Red did not fear, at least, not until the blade struck. Hastings frowned, his eyes moving from the body to the sparse furnishings. Familiarity? You mean someone he knew? One of the crew, perhaps? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign that his little gray cells were already at work. The crew, Hastings, they are a mystery in themselves. A ship does not sail without men, yet this one is empty, save for poor Monsieur Reed. No lifeboats missing, no signs of storm or wreck. Where have they gone? And why leave this man behind, dead? He knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers tracing the air above Reed's outstretched hand. See here, the fingers, they are curled, as if he reached for something in his final moment. But what? There is nothing within his grasp. Hastings, ever the soldier, bent to examine the floor nearby. No weapon, no papers, nothing but the blood and that glass. Could he have been drinking with his killer? Poirot's eyes gleamed. A most excellent observation, mon ami. This glass, it is the key to our tableau. It is not shattered, yet. It lies on its side, as if knocked over in a moment of surprise. A man does not drink alone, and then stab himself in the back. Nan, there was another here, someone who shared this rum, or perhaps someone who watched him drink it. He rose, moving to the desk with the grace of a cat. The glass, plain and heavy, bore no fingerprints, but the faint ring of rum on the wood suggested it had been full not long before Reed's death. Poirot leaned closer, inhaling delicately. Rum, yes, but there is something else. A trace of something bitter, perhaps. We must have this analyzed, Hastings. It may tell us more than the killer intended. Hastings nodded, though his expression betrayed a flicker of doubt. You think he was poisoned first, and then stabbed? That seems excessive. Poirot's smile was patient, almost indulgent. Excessive, perhaps, but not impossible. A poison to weaken, a knife to ensure. The killer, he is thorough, Nan. But let us examine the room further. Every crime leaves its traces, and Hercule Poirot, he will find them. The cabin, though small, was a microcosm of the ship's Spartan existence. The desk held no papers, no logbook, a curious absence for a captain's quarters. A single lantern, unlit, hung from a hook on the wall, its glass smudged with soot. A narrow bunk, its blanket neatly folded, suggested no one had slept there. Recently Poirot's gaze lingered on the bunk, his fingers tapping his cane thoughtfully. No logbook, Hastings. A ship without its record is like a man without his memory. Why is it missing? Stolen, perhaps, or destroyed. Hastings ran a hand through his hair, his unease growing. If the logbook's gone, it could mean someone wanted to hide where the ship had been, or what it was carrying. Poirot said, his voice sharp with approval. The Mary Celeste, too. It was a merchant vessel. Bound from Lisbon with a cargo of wool. But wool, it is a simple thing, Nan. Why then the whispers of smuggling, of piracy, of secrets? We must learn what this ship carried on, what it hid. He moved to the door, examining its frame. The wood was scratched, the lock intact but loose, as if forced open at some point. This door, it was not locked when the Coast Guard found the ship. Yet Reed was alone. Did the killer leave it open, or did others flee through it? Hastings, warming to the investigation, pointed to a small brass hook on the wall, empty save for a faint outline of dust. Something was hanging here, Poirot. A coat, maybe, or a bag. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A bag, perhaps. The dockworker in Lisbon spoke of a stowaway carrying a heavy bag. If it was here, it is gone now. But why take a bag and leave a body? The answer, it lies in the motive. He turned back to the body, his gaze settling on Reed's weathered face. The sailor's eyes, wide and staring, seemed to hold a final plea. Poirot's expression softened for a moment, a rare flicker of empathy crossing his fastidious features. "Poor man," he murmured. "You saw something you should not have, Nan, and for that, you paid with your life." Hastings, sensing Poirot's shift in mood, cleared his throat. "The Coast Guard mentioned 3 suspects, didn't they? Jonas Blake, the smuggler, Edward Carver, the pirate, and that stowaway. Do you think one of them did this?" Poirot straightened, his demeanor brisk once more. "Suspects, Hastings, are like pieces on a chessboard. Each has a role, but only one can be the king. Jonas Blake, he is a man of shadows, known for slipping past customs with his contraband. Edward Carver, called Red for his temper, or perhaps his deeds, is a pirate whose name carries fear, and the stowaway a known, unseen, but not without purpose. Each could have reason to kill, but we must find the thread that ties them. To this cabin." He gestured to the overturned chair. "Consider this, Hastings. The chair is tipped, but not far from the desk. Reed was sitting, perhaps, drinking with his killer. A moment of trust, then betrayal. The knife, it strikes from behind, but the glass it falls forward. Why?" Hastings frowned, trying to follow Poirot's logic. "You mean the killer was standing behind him? But how could Reed not notice?" Poirot's smile was almost mischievous. "Because, mon ami, the killer was clever. He or she distracted Reed, perhaps with conversation, perhaps with the promise of more rum. The mind, it is easily led, when the heart is at ease." He moved to the window, a small porthole that offered a view of the fog-shrouded sea. The glass was streaked with salt, but intact. "No escape through here," Poirot noted. "The killer, left by the door, and the crew they vanished into the night. But where, and why leave the ship to drift?" Hastings rubbed his chin, his military bearing at odds with the eerie setting. "It's as if the ship itself turned on Reed. No crew, no logbook, no answers, just this poor chap and a knife in his back." Poirot's eyes sparkled with the thrill of the chase. "Nan, Hastings, not the ship. A ship it is, but wood and iron. It is the human heart that kills, and the human mind that hides. We shall return to Dover, and there we shall question those who knew this ship, its crew, its cargo, its secrets. The Mary Celeste, too, it has spoken to us already. Now, we must listen." As they ascended to the deck, the fog seemed to thicken, wrapping the ship in a cocoon of silence. The Coast Guard cutter waited, its crew watching the derelict vessel with wary eyes. Poirot paused at the rail, his gaze lingering on the Mary Celeste too, as if committing every plank to memory. "This ship, it is a stage," he said softly, "and the crime, it is the play, but the curtain, it has not yet fallen." Hastings, sensing the weight of Poirot's words, nodded. "Where do we start then, Blake?" "Carver." Poirot's cane tapped the deck, a sharp, decisive sound. "We start with the truth, Hastings. And the truth, it is hidden in the shadows of these men and in the secrets of this ship. Come, we have work to do." As the cutter pulled away, the Mary Celeste too faded into the mist, its mysteries intact but not inviolable. Hercule, with his unerring instinct for the truth, knew that no crime could outwit the little gray cells. The scene was set, the clues were laid, and the game, as always, was afoot. Chapter 3. The smugglers trailed to Dover docks were a hive of activity, the air thick with the cries of gulls and the creak of ropes as ships swayed against their moorings. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in his tailored overcoat and polished shoes, navigated the bustling quayside with the air of a man who found disorder distasteful yet necessary to his purpose. Captain Hastings strode beside him, his face set in a determined frown, his military bearing a contrast to the detective's fastidious elegance. The fog that had cloaked the Mary Celeste too lingered here, though thinner, lending the scene a ghostly pallor. Poirot's sharp eyes missed nothing: the weathered faces of dock workers, the crates stacked haphazardly, the furtive glances of men who knew more than they said. Their destination was a squat customs office, its windows grimy with salt and soot. Inside, Jonas Blake awaited, detained on suspicion of involvement in the grim affair aboard the derelict ship. The smuggler was a known figure in Dover, a man whose name was whispered in taverns and feared by customs officials. Poirot had requested his detention based on the Coast Guard's report. Blake had been seen in Lisbon near the Mary Celeste, too, before her final voyage. His reputation for slipping contraband past watchful eyes well established. The office was cramped, its air heavy with the smell of ink and damp wood. Jonas Blake sat slouched in a chair, his wiry frame tense, his eyes darting like those of a cornered fox. His face was lean, almost gaunt, with a scar running along his jaw, memento, perhaps, of a deal gone wrong. His hands, rough and stained with tar, fidgeted with a frayed cuff, betraying a nervousness he tried to mask with a smirk. "Monsieur Blake," Poirot began, his voice smooth as polished marble, "you are a man who deals in secrets, Nan. Smuggling, it is a trade that thrives in the shadows. And yet, here you are, in the light of scrutiny, with a dead man on a ship you know well." Blake's smirk widened, though it did not reach his eyes. "I don't know nothin' about no dead man, Mr. Rye was in Lisbon, sure, but I ain't been on the Mary Celeste in weeks. Ask anyone at the docks." Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his amusement at such defiance. "Ask anyone, you say?" A curious choice of words. For the docks, they are full of men who see only what they are paid to see. But let us be precise. You were seen in a tavern with Thomas Reed, the man now dead, 2 nights before the ship sailed. What did you discuss?" Blake's eyes narrowed, his fingers stilling. "Reed, we had a drink. That's all. Old mates, you know. He was a sailor. I'm a businessman. We talked about the sea, the weather, nothin' special." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Nothing special, Monsieur Blake." Yet red. He was nervous, was he not? He spoke of cargo and trouble. These are not the words of a man at ease. What cargo, I wonder, could make a sailor so afraid? Blake shifted, his smirk faltering. Cargo. He didn't say nothin' specific, just sailor talk, worried about storms, maybe, or customs, sniffing around. I don't deal in wool, if that's what you're thinkin'. That's all the Mary Celeste was carryin', far as I know. Poirot's smile was polite, but cold, like a blade sheathed in velvet. Wool, a simple cargo. Yet a ship carrying only wool does not lose its crew and find its sailor dead with a knife in his back. You are a smuggler, Monsieur Blake. Brandy, perhaps, or something more valuable, something worth killing for. The accusation hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. Blake's face paled, his hands clenching into fists. I smuggle a bit of liquor, sure. Everyone does. But, murder. That's not my game. Reed was alive when I left him, I swear it. Poirot tilted his head, studying the man as one might a chessboard before a critical move. You swear, yes, but oaths. They are cheap on the docks. Tell me, where were you the night the Mary Celeste sailed? Your alibi, it is vague, Nan. Blake hesitated, a bead of sweat tracing his scar. I was in Lisbon, like I said. Stayed at a boarding house near the port. The landlady, Mrs. Ferreira, she vouched for me. Hastings, who had been silent, scribbled the name in his notebook. We'll check that, Blake. But if you're lying, I ain't lying. Blake snapped, his voice rising. I had no reason to kill Reed. He was a nobody, just a sailor. If he's dead, look to that pirate, Carver. He's got blood on his hands, not me. Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest. Monsieur Carver, you say? A most intriguing suggestion, but we shall come to him in time. For now, I am curious about this tavern meeting. You drank with Reed, yet he was troubled. Did he speak of anyone else? A stranger, perhaps? A stowaway? Blake's gaze flickered, a momentary lapse that Poirot noted with satisfaction. Stowaway? Didn't hear nothin' about that. Reed was jumpy, that's all. Kept looking over his shoulder, like he thought someone was watchin'. Poirot nodded, as if the answer pleased him. Watching, yes. A man who feels eyes upon him has reason to fear. And you, Monsieur Blake, you are a man who knows how to watch without being seen. A useful skill for a smuggler and a killer. Blake's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Poirot rose, his cane tapping the floor with finality. We shall speak again, monsieur. For now, you will remain here. The truth, it has a way of surfacing, like a ship from the fog. Outside, the docks buzzed with life, but Poirot's mind was elsewhere, piecing together the fragments of Blake's story. Hastings, catching up, adjusted his hat against the damp air. What do you make of him, Poirot? He's slippery, but is he a murderer? Poirot's lips curved in a thoughtful smile. Slippery, oui, like an eel in the water. Blake, he knows more than he says, but his fear is genuine. He fears discovery, but of what? Smuggling, certainly, but murder, that remains to be seen. His mention of Carver, it is too quick, too eager, a man deflecting suspicion, perhaps. Hastings frowned, his practical mind wrestling with the nuances. You think he's pointing us at Carver to throw us off? Perhaps, Poirot said, his eyes scanning the horizon where the Mary Celeste too lay anchored, a silent witness to its own tragedy. Or perhaps Carver is indeed a piece of this puzzle. We must find him, Hastings, and see what shadows he casts. Their next stop was a dockside tavern, the Rusty Anchor, where Blake claimed to have met Reed. The establishment was a low, smoky place, its walls blackened by years of tobacco and neglect. The landlord, a burly man named Tompkins, wiped glasses with a rag that seemed to spread more grime than it removed. He eyed Poirot's immaculate attire with suspicion, but a coin and a polite word loosened his tongue. I saw Blake and Reed here, Tompkins said, leaning on the bar. 2 nights before the ship sailed, like you said. They were at that table in the corner, heads close together. Reed looked like he'd seen a ghost, kept glancing at the door. Blake was calm, though, smiling like he always does. Poirot's fingers tapped his cane. And what did they discuss, Monsieur Tompkins? You have the ears of a landlord, Nan. Always listening. Tompkins chuckled. A rough sound. I don't eavesdrop, sir, but I hear things. Reed was muttering. About cargo and trouble Cumin. Said something about the ship not being safe. Blake just laughed. Told him to drink up and stop worrying. Hastings raised an eyebrow. Trouble coming? Did he say what kind? Tompkins shrugged. Didn't hear more. They left soon after. Reed was stumbling a bit too much rum, maybe. Blake helped him out, arm round his shoulder like they was mates. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Helped him, you say? Most interesting. And did you see anyone else that night? A stranger, perhaps, watching them? Tompkins scratched his chin. Now you mention it, there was a fella in a cloak, sitting alone by the fire. Didn't drink much, just watched. Small chap, face hidden, left-right, after Blake and Reed. Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings. A small man in a cloak. Nan. It matches the dockworker's tale of a stowaway. Mercy, Monsieur Tompkins. You have been most helpful. As they stepped back into the damp air, Hastings's brow furrowed. That cloaked figure, could it be the stowaway, watching Reed? And Blake. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. It is possible, Hastings. A stowaway with a purpose, perhaps to spy, perhaps to steal, or perhaps to kill. But why? And how does this connect to Blake's smuggling or Carver's piracy? We must follow this trail, mon ami, and see where it leads. The fog was lifting, revealing the stark outlines of ships and cranes. Poirot paused, his gaze distant. The smuggler's trail, it is a winding one, Hastings. But every trail, it leads to the truth. We shall find it, no matter how cleverly it is hidden. Chapter 4. The pirates' shadow. The rusty anchors, smoky haze, lingered in Hercule Poirot's memory as he and Captain Hastings made their way through Dover's labyrinthian docks. The tang of salt and tar sharp in the evening air. The fog had thinned to a gauzy mist, revealing the silhouettes of ships swaying like restless ghosts against their moorings. Poirot's polished shoes clicked on the cobblestones, a rhythmic counterpoint to the distant clatter of cranes and the shouts of dockwork. His mind, however, was far from the bustle, turning over the threads of Jonas Blake's testimony and the elusive figure of the cloaked stranger. Now, their path led to Edward Redcarver, a man whose name carried the weight of violence, and whose shadow loomed large over the mystery of the Mary Celeste II, Hastings. Ever the soldier adjusted his hat and glanced at Poirot. This Carver fellow sounds like trouble, Poirot. A pirate, they say, and not the romantic sort. If he's mixed up in this, he won't be as slippery as Blake. Poirot's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. Trouble, mon ami, is often the mask of truth. A man like Carver, he does not hide his nature, but his motives those he may conceal. We shall see what his shadow reveals. Their destination was the Black Gull, a dockside inn known as a haven for sailors and less savory types. Its weathered sign creaked in the breeze, the painted gull more a smudge than a bird. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of stale beer and unwashed bodies, the low murmur of voices punctuated by the clink of glasses. Poirot, immaculate in his overcoat, drew curious glances from the rough-hewn patrons, but his serene confidence silenced any challenge. Hastings, less at ease, kept a hand near his coat pocket, where a service revolver lay hidden. Edward Carver was not hard to find. He sat alone at a corner table, his broad frame dominating the space like a storm cloud. His face was a map of scars, the most prominent a jagged line across his left cheek, giving him a permanent sneer. His hair, once red, but now streaked with gray, earned him his moniker, though his eyes dark and unyielding suggested the name might also reflect bloodier deeds. A tankard of ale sat untouched before him, and his calloused hands rested on the table, still as stone but ready to strike. Monsieur Carver, Poirot said, his voice cutting through the din with quiet authority. I am Hercule Poirot, and this is my associate, Captain Hastings. We are here to speak of the Mary Celeste II and the unfortunate Thomas Reed. Carver's eyes flicked up, assessing Poirot with a predator's calm. His voice was a low growl, rough as gravel. Heard about Reed. Pity, but I ain't been on that ship in months. Whatever happened to him, it's none of my concern. Poirot seated himself opposite Carver, unperturbed by the man's menace. Hastings remained standing, his posture tense. None of your concern, you say? Poirot's tone was polite, almost conversational, but his eyes were sharp as a blade. Yet you sailed on that vessel, Nan. A man of your reputation does not leave a ship without leaving traces. Tell me, why did you part ways with the Mary Celeste II? Carver's sneer deepened, his scarred cheek twitching. I left because I was done with it. Reed was a meddler, always poking his nose where it didn't belong. The captain didn't like me, I didn't like him, so I walked away. Simple as that. Poirot's mustache quivered slightly, a sign of his keen interest. Simple, perhaps, but not complete. You were seen near the docks the night the ship sailed from Lisbon. A curious coincidence, Nan, for a man who claims to be done with that life. Carver's hands tightened, the knuckles whitening. Who's saying that, Blake? That weasel'd say anything to save his skin. I was in Lisbon, sure, but not on the docks. I was drinking at a tavern. Ask the barkeep at the Red Lion. He'll tell you. Hastings scribbled the name in his notebook, his expression skeptical. We'll check, Carver. But if you weren't on the ship, why's your name tied to it? And why's Reed dead with a knife in his back? Carver leaned forward, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Listen, soldier boy, I don't stab men in the back. If I'd wanted Reed dead, he'd have looked me in the eye when I did it. That's my way. Whoever killed him was a coward. Poirot's gaze remained steady, unruffled by the pirate's intensity. A coward, you say? Or a man with a secret to protect? Reed, he spoke of cargo in trouble before he died. You, Monsieur Carver, are a man who knows trouble. Well, did he cross you? Perhaps an old grudge, a debt unpaid. Carver's laugh was a harsh bark, startling a nearby patron who spilled his drink. A grudge. Reed wasn't worth the effort. He was a sailor, nothing more. If he got himself killed, it's because he stuck his nose in someone else's business. Maybe Blake's. That smuggler's got more secrets than a priest's confessional. Poirot tilted his head, his fingers tapping his cane with deliberate rhythm. You point to Monsieur Blake, just as he points to you. Most interesting. But let us speak of this cargo. The Mary Celeste, too, carried wool, or so it is said. Yet whispers of smuggling of brandy perhaps follow the ship like gulls. You, a man of the sea, you would know if such things were hidden aboard Nan. Carver's eyes narrowed, a flicker of caution crossing his face. I don't know nothing about brandy. Wool's what they loaded in Lisbon, far as I saw. If there was something else, Red might have found it. He was always snooping check-in crates, asking questions. Got on everyone's nerves. Poirot's smile was faint but piercing. And yet, you left the ship before such questions could trouble you. Or did they follow you to shore? Tell me, Monsieur Carver, did you see a stranger in Lisbon? Small man, perhaps, in a cloak, watching the ship? Carver's expression hardened, his scars seeming to deepen in the dim light. A cloaked man. Sounds like a fairy tale. I didn't see no one like that. But if you're talking about a stowaway, maybe Reed saw him. Maybe that's what got him killed. Poirot nodded, as if the answer satisfied him, though his mind was cataloguing every word, every pause. A stowaway. We. A shadow among shadows. Mercy, Monsieur Carver. We shall speak again. As they left the Black Gull, the inn's clamor faded behind them, replaced by the rhythmic lap of waves against the docks. Hastings exhaled, his tension easing slightly. He's a brute, Poirot. All that talk about not stabbing men in the back, it's bravado, isn't it? He could have done it. Poirot's eyes gleamed in the lamplight. Could have, yes, but would he? Carver, he is a man of violence, but not of subtlety. The knife in Reed's back, it is a quiet crime, a calculated one. Carver's hands, they are made for brawls, not betrayals. Yet his alibi, it is thin, and his knowledge of Reed's habits is too precise. Hastings frowned, his mind struggling to keep pace. You think he's hiding something, then? Not the murder, but something else. Precisement, Poirot said, his cane tapping the cobblestones. Carver knows more than he says, just as Blake does, but their motives, they differ. Blake hides his trade. Carver hides his past. And this stowaway, this cloaked figure, he is the unknown piece, the shadow that moves between them. They paused by a lamppost, its light casting long shadows across the damp street. Poirot's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the Mary Celeste too lay anchored, a silent witness to its own tragedy. We must return to the ship, Hastings, he said softly. The answers, they are there, in the wood and iron, in the traces left behind. Carver speaks of Reed's curiosity, of his snooping. Perhaps Reed found something he should not have, a secret worth killing for. Hastings nodded, his jaw set. Back to the ship then. But Poirot, if Carver's telling the truth about not being aboard, and Blake's alibi holds, who does that leave? The stowaway. Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his eyes alight with the thrill of the chase. The stowaway, mon ami, is a ghost until we give him form. But every ghost leaves a footprint, and we shall find it. The pirate's shadow, it is long, but it is not the only one cast upon this mystery. As they turned toward the quay, the mist swirled around them, a reminder that the truth, like the Mary Celeste too, was still shrouded, but not beyond the reach of Hercule Poirot's little gray cells. Chapter 5. The Stowaways. Secret. The Dover docks at dusk were a tapestry of shadows and sound, the last rays of sunlight glinting off the water as ships groaned against their moorings. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat a stark contrast to the weathered surroundings, moved with purposeful grace through the throng of sailors and Captain Hastings followed, his face etched with the strain of their morning's inquiries, his mind still wrestling with the menacing figure of Edward Carver and the slippery denials of Jonas Blake. The fog that had cloaked the Mary Celeste too had lifted, but a subtler haze of mystery hung over the case, and Poirot's sharp eyes gleamed with the anticipation of unraveling it. Their pursuit now turned to the most elusive figure in the affair, the stowaway. The Coast Guard's report had included a fleeting mention from a Lisbon dockworker, one Miguel Harris, who claimed to have seen a cloaked figure slipping aboard the Mary Celeste under cover of darkness, carrying a heavy bag. This shadow, unnamed and faceless, was a cipher in the puzzle, and Poirot, ever drawn to the obscure, was determined to give it form. They found Harris at the edge of the docks, mending nets beside a weathered schooner. He was a grizzled man, his face lined by years of sun and salt, his hands deft as they wove twine with practiced ease. His eyes, however, were wary as Poirot approached, the detective's impeccable attire drawing a raised eyebrow. "Monsieur Harris," Poirot began, his voice smooth and disarming. "I am Hercule Poirot, and this is Captain Hastings. We seek information about the Mary Celeste too, and you, I believe, have seen something most intriguing, a figure, a stowaway, boarding the ship in Lisbon." Harris paused, his fingers stilling on the net. I saw something," he said, his voice rough but cautious. "Didn't think much of it at the time. Lots of folk come and go at night on the docks." Poirot's smile was encouraging, though his gaze was piercing. "But this figure, he was not ordinary. Non. You spoke of a cloak, a heavy bag. Tell me, Monsieur Harris, what did you see, exactly?" Harris set the net aside, wiping his hands on his trousers. "It was late, past midnight. I was checking the lines on a nearby ship when I saw him, small fella, shorter than most, wearing a dark cloak with a hood, moved quick, like he didn't want to be seen. Had a bag slung over his shoulder, looked heavy, like it was weighing him down. He slipped onto the Mary Celeste through the cargo hatch, quiet as a cat." Hastings leaned forward, his notebook at the ready. "Did you see his face? Anything distinctive?" Harris shook his head. "Nah, the hood hid his face. Couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman. Just saw the cloak and that bag. He didn't come back out, least not while I was there." Poirot's fingers tapped his cane, a rhythmic accompaniment to his thoughts. "A bag, you say, heavy, and carried with care. Most interesting. And where was this cargo hatch, Monsieur Harris?" Harris pointed toward the horizon, where the Mary Celeste lay anchored. "Starboard side, near the stern. Leads to the lower hold. I thought it odd, 'cause the crew was still loading wool that day. No reason for someone to sneak aboard like that." Poirot's eyes gleamed with sudden intensity. No reason, indeed, unless that someone had a purpose. A thief, perhaps, or a spy, or something more sinister. "Did you see this figure again? Or anyone else acting strangely near the ship?" Harris squinted, as if dredging his memory. "Can't say I did. But Thomas Reed, The fellow what's dead he was actin' jumpy that day. Kept checking the cargo, mutterin' about something not being right. I didn't think much of it then, but now. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the detail. Mercy, Monsieur Harris. You have given us a piece of the puzzle. We shall trouble you no further for now. As they walked away, Hastings glanced at Poirot, his brow furrowed. A cloaked figure with a heavy bag, snaking aboard. Sounds like our stowaway's more than just a passenger. But what was in the bag? And why didn't Harris report it? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his amusement. The docks, mon ami, they are a world of their own. Men like Harris see much, but say little, unless pressed. As for the bag, it is a clue, Nan. Heavy, carried with courage, suggests something valuable, or dangerous. We must search the ship again, Hastings. This stowaway, he left his mark, and we shall find it. Their return to the Mary Celeste too was swift, the Coast Guard cutter cutting through the calm waters with purpose. The ship still anchored off. Dover seemed to watch their approach, its hull a silent witness to the tragedy within. As they boarded, the deck creaked underfoot, and Poirot's gaze swept over the familiar scene. The coiled ropes, the abandoned oilskin jacket, the eerie stillness that spoke of absence. They descended to the cargo hold, guided by Harris's description of the starboard hatch. The hold was a cavernous space, dimly lit by a single lantern the Coast Guard had left behind. Crates of wool, neatly stacked, filled most of the area, their labels faded but legible. Poirot moved with deliberate care, his eyes scanning the shadows. The hatch, Hastings, he said, pointing to a small rusted door, set into the bulkhead. This is where our stowaway entered. Let us see what he left behind. The hatch was stiff, its hinges protesting as Hastings forced it open. Beyond lay a narrow passage, barely wide enough for a man to pass. Poirot, undeterred by the cramped space, stepped inside, his cane tapping the wooden floor. Observe, Hastings, he said, his voice echoing softly. The dust here, it is disturbed. Footprints, small and light, leading into the hold. Hastings squinted, barely discerning the faint marks in the dim light. You're right, Poirot. Someone was here, and recently. But where did they go? Poirot followed the footprints, his movements precise despite the uneven floor. They led to a corner of the hold, where a stack of crates stood slightly askew. He knelt, examining the base of one crate, his gloved fingers tracing a seam in the would regard us, mon ami, he said, his voice low with excitement. This crate, it is not like the others. The wood, it is newer, and the nails they are loose. With Hastings's help, Poirot pried open the crate, revealing a hidden compartment beneath a layer of wool. Inside were several bottles, their dark glass glinting in the lantern light. Poirot lifted one, reading the label with a raised eyebrow. Brandy Hastings. French, and of a quality not meant for common trade. Contraband, without doubt. Hastings whistled softly. Smuggling then. Blake's work, do you think? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, but why leave such a prize behind? A smuggler does not abandon his goods unless he fears unless he has already killed to protect them. Look here, Hastings. He pointed to a corner of the compartment, where a faint smear of blood stained the wood. This blood, it is not fresh, but it is recent. Thomas Reed, he found this crate, and it cost him his life. Hastings's face darkened. So Reed stumbled on the contraband, and someone, Blake, maybe killed him to keep it quiet. Poirot rose, dusting his gloves with a fastidious flick. It is a possibility, but not a certainty. The stowaway, he entered through this hatch, carrying a heavy bag. Was he bringing something to add to this cache, or taking something away? And why did the crew vanish? These questions, they are like threads in a tapestry, and we must weave them together. They returned to the deck, the weight of their discovery settling over them. The Mary Celeste, too, seemed to loom larger in the gathering dusk, its secrets no longer silent, but still guarded. Poirot paused at the rail, his gaze distant. The stowaway Hastings. He is the key to this mystery. A shadow who moves unseen, carrying a burden we do not yet understand. We must find him, or the traces he left behind. Hastings nodded, his jaw set. But how, Poirot? We've got no name, no face, just a cloak and a bag. Poirot's eyes sparkled with the thrill of the chase. A cloak and a bag, mon ami, are more than enough for Hercule Poirot. The stowaway's secret, it is hidden in the shadows of this ship, but shadows, they cannot hide from the light of reason. We shall return to Dover and pursue this cloaked figure through the docks, through the whispers, until he is no longer a ghost. As the cutter carried them back to shore, the Mary Celeste too faded into the twilight, its mysteries still intact, but no longer inviolable. Poirot's little gray cells were at work, and the stowaway's secret, like all secrets, would soon be laid bare. Chapter 6. The Hidden Compartment. The Mary Celeste to lay silent under a sky bruised with the last hues of dusk, its hull a dark silhouette against the restless waves of the English Channel. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the evening chill, stood on the deck with an air of quiet determination, his sharp green eyes scanning the ship as if it might whisper its secrets directly to him. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, followed close behind, his face a mixture of curiosity and unease. The weight of their recent discovery, a cache of smuggled brandy and a bloodstain in the cargo hold, still heavy on his mind. The ship, though abandoned, seemed to pulse with hidden truths, and Poirot was resolved to uncover them. Mon ami, Poirot said, his voice low but resonant. This ship, it is like a locked box. We have found one key, the contraband, but there are more locks to open. The blood, the missing crew, the stowaway's shadow, they are all pieces of the same puzzle. Hastings nodded, his hand brushing the reassuring weight of his revolver. That blood in the crate, Poirot, it's a grim clue. Reed must have found the brandy, and someone didn't want him talking. But why leave the contraband behind? It's worth a fortune. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. Precisement, Hastings. A smuggler does not abandon his treasure without reason. Fear, perhaps, or necessity. We must search this ship again, for the stowaway's bag, the crew's absence. The truth, it is all here, hidden in the wood and shadows. They descended to the cargo hold once more, the narrow passage to the starboard hatch, now familiar. The lantern's feeble glow cast flickering shadows across the crates of wool, their orderly stacks a deceptive facade for the secrets beneath. Poirot moved with the precision of a watchmaker, his cane tapping softly as he retraced their earlier path to the hidden compartment. The crate, its false bottom now exposed, stood as they had left it, the bottles of French brandy glinting like dark jewels. The bloodstain, a faint smear on the wood, seemed to accuse silently. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers hovering over the stain. This blood, Hastings, it is not a splash, but a smear, as if something was dragged across it. Red. He was not killed here, but his discovery of this crate marked him for death. Hastings frowned, peering into the compartment. So he found the brandy, confronted someone, and they killed him in the captain's cabin. But who? Blake's the smuggler. But that cloaked figure, Harris Saw, could the stowaway be involved? Poirot's eyes gleamed with the thrill of deduction. The stowaway. He is the shadow we chase. But let us look further. This compartment, it is clever, but not unique. A ship, it has many places to hide. He rose, his gaze sweeping the hold. The crates, though numerous, were arranged with a certain irregularity, as if some had been shifted recently. Poirot moved to a corner where the stacks seemed misaligned, his fingers tracing the edges of a particularly heavy crate. "Regard us, Hastings," he said, pointing to faint scratches on the floor. "These marks, They suggest movement something heavy, dragged or pushed. Hastings, ever practical, set his shoulder to the crate, grunting as he shifted it aside. Beneath, the floorboards were slightly raised, their edges worn as if frequently lifted. Poirot's smile was one of quiet triumph. A hidden compartment, mon ami. Let us see what it conceals. With careful effort, they pried up the boards, revealing a shallow space beneath. Inside lay a canvas sack, its fabric stained with salt and grime. Poirot lifted it with care, noting its weight not as heavy as Harris had described, but substantial. He untied the knot, revealing a collection of small, tightly wrapped parcels, each sealed with wax. Breaking one open, Poirot found a powdery substance, its faint, acrid scent unmistakable. Opium, he said softly, his voice heavy with realization. Not brandy alone, but something far more dangerous. This, Hastings, is no mere smuggler's game. This is a trade that kills. Hastings' jaw tightened, his soldier's instincts bristling. Opium. That's serious business, Poirot. Blake could be behind this, but it's bigger than one man. And Reed, did he stumble on this, too? Poirot nodded, retying the sack with meticulous care. Reed, he was a curious man. Nan. He found the brandy, perhaps, and then this. A sailor with a conscience, or perhaps one who sought a share of the profit. Either way, his discovery was his doom. They replaced the floorboards, leaving the sack undisturbed for the Coast Guard to seize as evidence. Poirot's mind, however, was already racing ahead, weaving the new clue into the tapestry of the case. This opium, it changes the stakes, Hastings. Brandy is a smuggler's trade, but opium, it is a secret worth killing for. The stowaway. He carried a heavy bag. Was it to add to this cache, or to take from it? And the crew, why did they vanish? Hastings rubbed his chin, his brow furrowed. If the crew was in on it, they might have fled to avoid being caught. But why leave Reed behind, dead or alive? Poirot's fingers tapped his cane, a rhythmic accompaniment to his thoughts. Because, mon ami, the crew was not all of one mind. Some, perhaps, were complicit. Others, like Reed, were not. The killer needed Reed silenced, and the crew scattered, paid off, or worse. We must find them, Hastings, for they hold the key to the stowaway's identity. They ascended to the deck, the night air sharp with the promise of a storm. The Mary Celeste, too, creaked as if protesting their intrusion, its masts swaying in the rising wind. Poirot paused at the rail, his gaze fixed on the distant lights of Dover. The hidden compartment. It speaks to us, he said softly. It tells of greed, of secrecy, of betrayal, but it does not tell us who. Hastings, his practical mind grappling with the complexity, ventured a guess. Blake's the smuggler, Poirot. This opium, it's got to be his doing. He's got the connections, the know-how. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, but the opium, it is a bold move, even for a man like Blake. And Carver, with his violent past, could he be part of this trade? Or the stowaway, this cloaked figure perhaps? He is not a mere thief, but a rival, seeking to steal the prize. They boarded the cutter, the Coast Guard crew, silent as they cast off. The Mary Celeste, too, receded into the darkness, its secrets partially unveiled, but still guarded. Poirot stood at the stern, his hands clasped behind his back. We must return to Dover, Hastings, and speak again with Blake. His alibi, it must be tested. And Carver, his shadow looms large. But is it the shadow of a killer? The stowaway, he is the unknown. The ghost, we must make flesh. Hastings nodded, his resolve firming. And the crew, how do we find them? They could be anywhere by now. Poirot's eyes sparkled in the lantern light. The crew, mon ami, they cannot hide forever. A ship is their home, and men do not abandon their home without leaving traces. We shall find them through whispers, through records, through the little gray cells. The hidden compartment, It is but one step on our path. The truth, it awaits us. As the cutter churned toward shore, the first drops of rain began to fall, a fitting prelude to the storm that Poirot knew was coming, not just in the sky, but in the unraveling of the mystery that bound the Mary Celeste to its grim fate. Chapter 7. The sailor's last words. The Dover morgue was a cold, sterile place, its air heavy with the antiseptic temps that failed to mask the underlying scent of mortality. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat a stark contrast to the drab stood with an air of quiet reverence beside the slab where Thomas Reed's body lay. The sailor's weathered face, now pale and still, bore the marks of a life at sea lines, etched by sun and salt, a faint scar above one eyebrow. Captain Hastings, standing a respectful distance away, shifted uncomfortably, his soldier's discipline at odds with the grim intimacy of the scene. The coroner, a dour man named Dr. Ellison, hovered nearby, his clipboard clutched like a shield. Monsieur le Docteur Poirot began, his voice soft but commanding. You have examined the body of Thomas Reed. Tell me, what secrets does it hold? Dr. Ellison adjusted his spectacles, his tone clipped and professional. Death by a single stab wound to the back, penetrating the heart. The blade was a sailor's knife, heavy and sharp, driven with considerable force. Death would have been near instantaneous, likely within seconds. No defensive wounds, suggesting he was taken by surprise. Poirot's green eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on Reed's lifeless form. No defensive wounds, you say? Most interesting. A man who does not fight back, he trusts his killer, or he does not see the blow coming, and the time of death, based on rigor and lividity, Ellison replied, consulting his notes. I'd estimate death occurred 2 nights ago, between 10 and midnight. The body was undisturbed until the Coast Guard found it. Hastings, jotting notes in his ever-present notebook, glanced up. 2 nights ago, that aligns with the ship's last sighting in Lisbon. Whoever killed him acted fast and left the ship adrift. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. Fast, oui, but not careless. The killer, he is precise, Nan. A single blow, no struggle. And yet, the ship is empty, save for this poor man. Why? He stepped closer to the body, his gloved hands hovering over Reed's clothing, a rough sailor's jacket, stained with salt and tar. With delicate precision, Poirot examined the pockets, his fingers pausing as they brushed a folded scrap of paper tucked inside the lining. Regard as Hastings, he said, unfolding it with care. The paper was crumpled, its edges worn, and scrawled in a hasty hand was a single word, cargo. Poirot's eyes gleamed with sudden intensity. Cargo, he murmured. The sailor's last word, perhaps. He knew something, Hastings, something dangerous. This word, it is his accusation, his warning. Hastings leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Cargo, that must point to the brandy and opium we found. Reed discovered the contraband, and it got him killed. Poirot nodded, though his expression was cautious. A possibility, mon ami, but we must not leap to conclusions. The brandy, the opium, they are secrets worth killing for, oui, but this word, cargo, it is vague. Was it the contraband he meant, or something else? And why write it down? Dr. Ellison, intrigued despite himself, ventured a question. You think he wrote it, as he was dying? A clue to his killer. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, or perhaps it was written earlier, a note to himself, a reminder of what he had seen. But it was hidden, Nan, in the lining of his jacket, as if he feared it would be found. This suggests a man who knew he was in danger. Hastings rubbed his chin, his practical mind grappling with the implications. So Reed found the hidden compartment, wrote this note, and then what? Confronted someone, Blake, maybe, and got a knife in the back for it. Poirot's fingers tapped his cane, a rhythmic accompaniment to his thoughts. It is a plausible scenario, but not the only one. The stowaway, this cloaked figure with his heavy bag, he may have been the threat Reed feared. Or Carver, with his violent past perhaps Reed crossed him. And the crew, Hastings, where are they? Their absence is as telling as this note. They left the morgue, the cold air of Dover's streets, a sharp contrast to the stifling atmosphere within. The town was alive with the clatter of carts and the shouts of vendors. But Poirot's mind was elsewhere, piecing together the fragments of the case. The scrap of paper, now safely tucked in his pocket, was a tangible link to Reed's final moments, and he was determined to follow its lead. Their next stop was the customs office, where Jonas Blake remained under detention. Poirot, sensing the smuggler's unease during their last meeting, was eager to press him further. The office was as grim as before, its walls stained with years of damp and neglect. Blake sat slouched in his chair, his shifty eyes darting between Poirot and Hastings, his earlier bravado tempered by a night in custody. "Monsieur Blake," Poirot said, his voice smooth but edged with steel, "we have found something most curious. A note, hidden in Thomas Reed's jacket, bearing the word cargo. You, a man who deals in hidden things, you will tell me what this means." Blake's scar twitched, his hands clenching. "Cargo? Don't know nothing about that. Reed was always poking around, like I told you. If he wrote that, he was probably fretting about the wool or something." Poirot's smile was cold. "Wool, Monsieur Blake, a simple cargo, yet it does not explain a knife in the back, nor does it explain the brandy and opium we found in a hidden compartment aboard the Mary Celeste too. These are your trade, Nan, and Reed. He knew of them." Blake's face paled, his smirk gone. "Opium? I don't touch that stuff. Brandy, maybe, but opium's too risky. If Reed found something like that, it wasn't mine." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze unrelenting. "Yet you met Reed 2 nights before the ship sailed, and he was nervous. Speaking of cargo and trouble, you helped him from the tavern, did you not? A man so drunk he could barely walk, yet he was alert enough to write this note. Tell me, Monsieur Blake, what did you discuss after you left the Rusty Anchor?" Blake's eyes flickered, a momentary lapse. "Nothing special. I got him to his lodgings, that's all. He was muttering about the ship, said he didn't trust the crew. I told him to sleep it off." Hastings, unable to contain himself, interjected. "Didn't trust the crew? Why? Was he afraid of someone specific, Carver? Maybe? Or this stowaway everyone's talking about?" Blake shrugged, his nonchalance strained. "Didn't say. Just kept going on about the cargo being wrong. I thought he was drunk rambling. I left him at his door and went back to mine." Poirot's fingers stilled on his cane, a sign of his focus. "And this door, it was where?" "The boarding house of Mrs. Ferreira, you said." "We shall verify this, Monsieur Blake. But I warn you, the truth, it is like the tide, it always comes in." As they left the customs office, Hastings's brow was furrowed. "He's hiding something, Poirot. That business about Reed not trusting the crew, it's new. And that note, cargo, it's got to point to the opium." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. But the opium, it is only part of the picture. Reed's note, it is a cry from the grave. But to whom? The stowaway, perhaps, was his furor, his discovery. We must find this cloaked figure, Hastings, and we must find the crew. They are the missing pieces. Their next move was to visit Mrs. Ferreira, the landlady Blake claimed as his alibi. Her boarding house was a narrow, salt-stained building, near the Lisbon docks, its details relayed by a telegram from a local contact. Poirot dispatched a message to verify Blake's story, but his instincts told him the smuggler's tale was a tapestry of half-dashed truths. As they walked back toward the quay, the lights of Dover flickered in the gathering dusk, a reminder of the world beyond the mystery. Poirot paused, his gaze distant. The sailor's last words, Hastings, they are not just words, they are a map, pointing to the heart of this crime. Cargo contraband, yes, but also secrets, betrayals, and a ship that sails without its crew. We shall follow this map, and it will lead us to the killer. Hastings, his resolve firming, nodded. Where to next, then? Back to the ship, or after Carver again? Poirot's smile was resolute. To the ship, mon ami, but not yet. First, we shall seek the crew are, those who know where they have gone. The sailor's last words, they echo in the silence of the Mary Celeste too. We shall make that silence speak. Chapter 8. The alibi unraveled. The customs office in Dover was a fortress of bureaucracy. Its walls steeped in the damp chill of the sea and the faint scent of ink and tar. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat pristine despite the gritty stood with an air of quiet authority, his cane tapping a soft rhythm on the worn floorboards. Captain Hastings, at his side, clutched his notebook, his face set in a mixture of determination and frustration. The discoveries aboard the Mary Celeste, to the hidden compartment, the opium, the blood-stained crate, had tightened the web of the mystery, and the scrap of paper bearing Thomas Reed's final word, cargo, was a beacon, guiding their pursuit. Now Poirot had summoned Jonas Blake, Edward Carver, and the dock worker, Miguel Harris, to the customs office. Determined to test their stories against a sharpening edge of truth. The room was small, its single window admitting a feeble light that did little to dispel the gloom. Blake sat at one end of a scarred table, his wiry frame tense, his scar twitching as he avoided Poirot's gaze. Carver, at the opposite end, exuded a brooding menace, his scarred hands folded but ready to strike, his dark eyes fixed on some distant point. Harris, standing uneasily by the door, shifted his weight, his weathered face betraying a reluctance to be there. The air was thick with suspicion, each man a piece in Poirot's intricate puzzle. Messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding. We are here to unravel the truth of Thomas Reed's death aboard the Mary Celeste II. A man does not die alone on a ship without reason, and you, each of you, hold a piece of that reason. Let us begin with the facts. He paced slowly before the table, his movements deliberate, his green eyes piercing. Reed was stabbed in the back, a single, precise blow. He left a note, cargo hidden in his jacket. We have found contraband aboard the ship, brandy, and opium, hidden in secret compartments. These are not the wares of an honest merchant. One of you knows why Reed died, and one of you, I believe, is his killer. Blake's smirk was strained, his voice sharp. I told you, I was in Lisbon, nowhere near the ship when it sailed. Reed was alive when I left him. You're barking up the wrong tree, Mr. Poirot's smile was polite, but unrelenting. Monsieur Blake, your alibi, it is like a ship with holes. It does not hold water. You claim you were at Mrs. Ferreira's boarding house. Yet, a telegram from Lisbon informs me that Mrs. Ferreira saw you leave at dusk, not returning until dawn. The Mary Celeste, too, sailed that night. Where were you, monsieur? Blake's scar twitched, his hands clenching. I was out drinking, at another tavern. The Red Lion, like I said. Ask the barkeep, he'll tell you I was there. Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his amusement. The Red Lion, oui, but the barkeep recalls you only briefly, and not past 10 o'clock. The ship sailed near midnight, and Red died between 10 and midnight. You had time, Monsieur Blake, to slip aboard, to meet Reed, to silence him. Blake's eyes darted to Carver, a flicker of desperation. What about him? Carver's got a temper, and he hated Reed. Everyone knew it. Why ain't you grillin' him? Poirot turned to Carver, whose scarred face remained impassive, though his eyes burned with a quiet fury. Monsieur Carver, you claim you left the Mary Celeste 2 months ago, yet we found your initial ZC carved into the captain's cabin, fresh enough to suggest a recent visit. Why were you there, and what did you argue with Reed about? Carver's voice was a low growl, his hands tightening. I told you, I wasn't on that ship. Those initials could be any onesie, ain't exactly rare. Reed and I had words. Months back. Over a debt he owed me. I didn't need to kill him to settle it. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. A debt, you say? Yet witnesses place you near the Lisbon docks the night the ship sailed. A man of your reputation does not linger without purpose. Did Reed threaten to expose something, perhaps your own dealings, with the ship's cargo? Carver's laugh was harsh, echoing in the cramped room. Cargo. I don't care about wool or brandy. If Reed was poking into something, it wasn't mine. Look to Blake. He's the one with contraband in his blood. Poirot's eyes flickered to Harris, who stood rigid, his hands clasped tightly. And you, Monsieur Harris, you saw a cloaked figure boarding the ship, carrying a heavy bag. You claim you did not see this figure leave, yet you were on the docks all night. Did you see nothing else? No one else near the Mary Celeste too? Harris's weathered face flushed, his voice hesitant. I told you all I saw. That cloaked fellow went aboard, and I didn't see him come out. I was busy with my own work, checking lines, mending nets. I didn't see Blake or Carver, if that's what you're asking. Poirot's smile was faint but piercing. Yet you saw Reed that day, Nan? Nervous, checking the cargo, muttering about something not right. Did he speak to you, Monsieur? Harris, did he share his fears? Harris shifted, his eyes dropping to the floor. He said something about the cargo being wrong, but I didn't pay much mind. Sailors always grumble. I didn't know he'd end up dead. Poirot stopped, pacing, his cane tapping the floor with finality. Messieurs, you each tell a story, but none of you tell the whole truth. The brandy, the opium, the note, they point to a secret rediscovered, a secret one of you killed to protect. But the crew, they are missing, and the stowaway, he is a ghost. I, Hercule Poirot, will make this ghost speak. He turned to Blake, his voice sharp. Monsieur Blake, your alibi is thin, and your trade in contraband gives you motive. You met Reed, you left the tavern with him, perhaps to the ship, where he confronted you about the opium. Blake's face reddened, his voice rising. I didn't kill him, I swear it. I left him at his lodgings, alive. Poirot's gaze shifted to Carver. And you, Monsieur Carver, your initials betray your presence, and your past with Reed suggests a grudge. Did he threaten you, perhaps, with knowledge of your own secrets? Carver's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his silence as heavy as a storm cloud. Poirot turned to Harris, his eyes narrowing. And you, Monsieur Harris? You see much, but say little. A dock worker's eyes are sharp, yet you claim ignorance of all but a cloaked figure. Did you see this figure before, perhaps, in the company of Blake or Carver? Harris's hands trembled slightly, his voice low. I told you, I didn't see nothing else. Just that figure, and then I was back to my nets. Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, though his mind was cataloguing every gesture, every hesitation. Very well, messieurs, you may go for now. But, know this, the truth, it is like a tide. It cannot be held back forever. As Blake, Carver, and Harris filed out, their footsteps, heavy with unease, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. They're all hiding something, Poirot. Blake's alibi is shaky, Carver's too quick to point fingers, and Harris's nervous, like he knows more than he's letting on. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. We, Hastings, they are a chorus of half-truths. Blake fears exposure, Carver conceals his past, and Harris's eyes betray a secret he dares not speak. The note, the contraband, the missing crew, they are all threads in the same tapestry. We must pull one thread to unravel the whole. Hastings rubbed his chin, his practical mind struggling to keep pace. So what's our next move? Check Blake's alibi at the Red Lion, or press Carver about those initials? Poirot's eyes gleamed with the thrill of the chase. Both, mon ami, but first, we must set a trap. The killer, He is clever, but he is not infallible. We shall spread word that the opium has been found and is being moved to a secure warehouse. The guilty one, he will act to protect his secret, and we shall be watching." Hastings nodded, his resolve firming. A trap. Risky, but it might flush them out. And the stowaway. Where does he fit? Poirot's cane tapped the floor, a sharp, decisive sound. The stowaway Hastings is the shadow we chase. A cloaked figure, a heavy bag perhaps he is the killer, perhaps he is a witness, but he is no ghost. He is flesh and blood, and we shall find him. The alibi of one of these men, it will unravel. And with it, the truth of the Mary Celeste too. As they stepped into the Dover night, the air sharp with the promise of rain, Poirot's mind was already weaving the next move in his intricate game. The customs office faded behind them, but the echoes of Blake's denials, Carver's menace, and Harris's unease lingered, a prelude to the revelation that Poirot knew was near. Chapter 9. The trap is set. The Dover docks at midnight were a realm of shadows. The air thick with the scent of salt, and the distant rumble of waves against the breakwater. Hercule Poirot, his silhouette sharp against the flickering glow of a single lantern, stood concealed behind a stack of crates, his overcoat blending with the darkness. Captain Hastings crouched beside him, his breath visible in the chill night air. His service revolver, a reassuring weight in his pocket. The trap had been set with meticulous care. Word had been spread through discreet channels, tavern whispers. A careless remark to a dockworker that the opium found aboard the Mary Celeste II was to be moved to a secure warehouse under cover of night. Poirot, ever the strategist, knew the killer would not resist the bait, for the contraband was the heart of the crime that had left Thomas Reed dead. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, his voice barely audible, "do you really think this will work? Blake, Carver, or even Harris there, not fools. They'll know it's a risk." Poirot's eyes gleamed in the dim light, his mustache a faint curve of confidence. "Mon ami, the guilty man, he is driven by fear, not wisdom. The opium, it is his secret, his fortune, perhaps his ruin. He will come, Hastings, because he cannot afford to let it slip from his grasp." The warehouse, a looming structure of weathered brick, stood at the edge of the docks, its doors secured with a heavy padlock that gleamed falsely in the moonlight. A lock Poirot had ensured was easily picked. Inside, crates marked as containing the Mary Celeste II's cargo were stacked, though the opium itself remained under Coast Guard lock and key. The ruse was simple but precise, designed to lure the killer into revealing himself. Poirot's little gray cells had calculated every detail, from the timing of the rumor to the positioning of the Coast Guard officers hidden nearby, their presence known only to him. The night was still, save for the occasional creak of a ship or the cry of a gull. Poirot's gaze never wavered from the warehouse door, his mind alert to the faintest sound. Hastings, less patient, shifted slightly, his eyes scanning the shadows. "What if it's the stowaway?" he murmured. "We've no idea who he is, could be anyone." Poirot's voice was a soft murmur, yet firm. "The stowaway, Hastings, he is no phantom. He is a man, with motives and fears. If he comes tonight, we shall see his face. If not, one of our suspects, Carver or Harris, will betray himself. Patience, mon ami." Minutes stretched into an hour, the cold seeping into their bones. Then, a faint sound, a scuff of boots on cobblestones, broke the silence. Poirot's hand tightened on his cane, his body still as a statue. A figure emerged from the mist, cloaked in dark fabric, moving with the stealth of a predator. The hood obscured the face, but the figure's small stature and cautious gait matched Harris's description of the stowaway. In one hand, a crowbar gleamed, its purpose clear. Hastings tensed, his hand inching toward his revolver, but Poirot's gentle touch on his arm stayed him. "Not yet," Poirot whispered. "We must see what he does." The figure approached the warehouse door, pausing to scan the surroundings. Satisfied, he knelt, working the crowbar against the padlock with practiced ease. The lock gave way with a soft click, and the door creaked open. The figure slipped inside, the darkness swallowing him whole. Poirot motioned to Hastings, and they moved silently toward the warehouse, the Coast Guard officers converging from their hidden posts. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of damp wood and tar. The figure was already at work, prying open a crate with swift, precise movements. Splinters fell to the floor as the lid gave way, revealing only straw and empty bottles. A decoy stepped forward, his lantern raised, casting a stark light across the scene. "Monsieur Blake," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade, "it is over." The figure froze, the crowbar clattering to the floor. The hood fell back, revealing Jonas Blake's scarred face, his eyes wide with shock and fury. "You?" he spat, his voice hoarse. "How did you know?" Poirot's smile was serene, but his eyes were unrelenting. "The little gray cells, Monsieur Blake, they see what others miss. Your alibi, it was a tapestry of lies, fraying at the edges. You were not at the Red Lion all night, as you claimed. You were seen leaving Mrs. Ferreira's boarding house, and your presence here, seeking the opium, confirms your guilt. You killed Thomas Reed to protect your secret." Blake's hands clenched, his scar twitching as he backed toward the crates. "You've got nothing on me. I came to check the cargo, that's all. I didn't kill Reed." Hastings, revolver now drawn, stepped forward. "Don't move, Blake. You're caught red-handed. That opium was your doing, wasn't it? And Reed found out." Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Let us be precise, Hastings. Monsieur Blake, you met Reed in the tavern, where he spoke of cargo and trouble. You helped him from the Rusty Anchor, but not to his lodgings. You took him to the Mary Celeste too, where he confronted you about the opium hidden in the hold. A struggle, perhaps, or a moment of panic and you drove a knife into his back." Blake's face contorted, a mixture of fear and defiance. "You can't prove that. The crew, they could have done it. Or that pirate, Carver, he hated Reed." Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his satisfaction. "The crew, Monsieur Blake, they are your accomplices, paid to scatter and keep silent. Carver, he has his sins, but not this one. The blood on the crate, it matches Reed's, and your presence here tonight, Tit betrays your motive. You feared the opium would be traced to you, and with it, the murder." The Coast Guard officers moved in, their lanterns casting stark shadows as they seized Blake's arms. He struggled briefly, his curses echoing in the warehouse, but the fight drained from him as the reality of his capture sank in. "I didn't mean to kill him," he muttered, his voice breaking. "He was going to turn me in. I had no choice." Poirot's expression softened, a flicker of pity crossing his features. "No choice, monsieur. There is always a choice. You chose greed, and it led to murder. The Mary Celeste too, it will testify against you." As Blake was led away, Hastings holstered his revolver, his brow furrowed. "That's it then. Blake's our man. What about the stowaway, the cloaked figure Harris saw?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with the thrill of revelation. The stowaway, mon ami, was Blake himself. The cloak, the heavy bag, they were his disguise to board the ship unseen, to check his contraband or add to it. Harris saw him, but did not know who he was. The ghost, it is no more. Hastings nodded, though a trace of doubt lingered. "And Carver, Harris, are they in the clear?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "For now, Hastings. Carver's shadow is dark, but not murderous. Harris, he sees more than he says, but his role is that of a witness, not a killer. We must now find the crew, for their silence, it is bought with Blake's coin." The warehouse doors closed behind them, the night reclaiming its silence. The trap had sprung, and Jonas Blake was ensnared, But Poirot knew the mystery was not fully unraveled. The Mary Celeste, too, still held secrets, and the little gray cells would not rest until every thread was tied. Chapter 10. The Confession. The Dover Customs Office, its walls steeped in the damp of the sea, was a stark contrast to the storm brewing outside. Rain lashed the windows, the wind howling as if echoing the turmoil of the case Hercule Poirot had so nearly unraveled. The detective stood at the center of the room, his overcoat immaculate despite the night's exertions, his green eyes fixed on Jonas Blake, who sat slumped in a chair, handcuffs glinting on his wrists. Captain Hastings stood by the door, his notebook tucked away, his face a mixture of triumph and unease. The trap at the warehouse had sprung, catching Blake in the act of seeking the opium. But Poirot's little gray cells were still at work, probing for the final truths hidden in the smuggler's defiance. Monsieur Blake, Poirot began, his voice calm but resonant with authority. You stand accused of the murder of Thomas Reed, a crime committed to protect your illicit trade. The opium, the brandy, the blood on the crate, they all point to you. Yet you claim innocence, even as you were caught seeking the very contraband that cost Reed his life. Speak, monsieur, and let us have the truth. Blake's scar twitched, his shifty eyes darting between Poirot and the Coast Guard officer stationed nearby. The smirk that had once defined his demeanor was gone, replaced by a haggard expression, his wiry frame sagging under the weight of capture. I told you, he muttered, his voice hoarse. I didn't mean to kill him. It wasn't planned. Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his keen interest. Not planned, you say? Yet a knife in the back. It is a deliberate act. Nan, tell me, Monsieur Blake, how does a man not mean to murder? Blake's hands clenched, the handcuffs clinking softly. It was an accident, I swear. Reedy found the opium. That night at the Rusty Anchor, he was drunk, rambling about the cargo being wrong. I thought he was just token nonsense, but when I got him to the ship, he showed me the hidden compartment. Said he'd seen the bags. Knew it wasn't just brandy. He wanted to cut half the profits, the greedy fool. Hastings, unable to stay silent, stepped forward. So you killed him to keep him quiet? That's no accident, Blake. Blake's eyes flashed with desperation. It wasn't like that. We argued in the captain's cabin. He was shouting, waving that knife of his, saying he'd go too. The customs men. I tried to calm him, grabbed for the knife, and it happened so fast. He turned, I lunged, and the blade went in. I didn't mean to kill him, I swear. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting, his voice soft but piercing. An accident, Monsieur Blake. Yet you left him there, dead, and fled the ship. You did not call for help. You did not confess. Instead, you paid the crew to scatter, to make it seem as though the Mary Celeste, too, was abandoned. This is not the act of an innocent man. Blake's head dropped, his voice barely a whisper. I panicked. I knew what it looked like. The opium, it's worth a fortune, but it's a death sentence if the law gets hold of it. I told the crew to clear out, gave them money to keep quiet. Said I'd handle it, make it look like pirates or something. I didn't know what else to do. Poirot's fingers tapped his cane, a rhythmic counterpoint to the rain's relentless drum, and the stowaway, Monsieur Blake. The cloaked figure seen by Harris, carrying a heavy bag, was that you, slipping aboard to check your contraband, or to add to it? Blake nodded, his shoulders slumping further. Aye, that was me. I wore a cloak to avoid being seen. Had to make sure the opium was safe, that Reed hadn't moved it. I didn't know he'd already found it, written that damn note. Poirot's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. The note, we cargo. A warning, a confession, or perhaps a plea. Reed knew he was in danger, and he left a clue to his killer. You, Monsieur Blake, you were the shadow he feared. Hastings, his brow furrowed, interjected. What about the crew, Blake? Where are they now? You can't expect us to believe they just vanished. Blake's gaze flickered, a trace of defiance returning. They're hiding. I gave M enough to lie low some in London, some across the channel. They won't talk, not if they know. What's good for M? Poirot's smile was cold, his voice sharp. They will talk, Monsieur Blake, when the law finds them. And find them we shall, for no man can hide forever from Hercule Poirot. You paid them to flee, but their silence. It is not loyalty, it is fear. They will speak, and their words will bind you tighter to this crime. The Coast Guard officer stepped forward, ready to escort Blake to a cell, but Poirot raised a hand, his gaze still fixed on the smuggler. One final question, monsieur. The opium it is not your trade alone, Nan, who supplied it. Who else stands to lose if your secret is exposed? Blake's lips tightened, a flicker of fear crossing his face. I ain't saying nothin' about that. You got me for Reed? Fine. But the rest you'll get nothin' from me. Poirot nodded, as if the refusal was expected. Very well, Monsieur Blake, but the truth, it has a way of surfacing, like a shipwreck in a storm. You will face justice for Thomas Reed, and your silence, it will not protect your masters for long. As Blake was led away, his footsteps heavy on the creaking floor, Hastings turned to Poirot, his expression a mix of relief and lingering questions. That's it then. Blake's our man, and the stowaway was just him in disguise. But this business about the crew and whoever's behind the opium, it's not over, is it? Poirot's eyes sparkled in the dim light of the customs office. Not over, mon ami, but nearly so. Blake's confession, it is the keystone, but the arch is not complete. The crew, they must be found, for their testimony will seal his fate. And the opium trade, it is a shadow that stretches beyond Dover, beyond Blake. But for now, we have the killer of Thomas Reed. Hastings rubbed his chin, his practical mind turning over the details. What about Carver? He's got a past with Reed, and those initials in the Cabinese sea, they're still a loose end. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Carver, he is a storm, but not the one that sank this ship. His initials, they are a coincidence, or a relic of his time aboard, not a mark of murder. We shall speak to him again, to tie up this thread, but I believe he is innocent of this crime, at least. The rain outside intensified, a fitting backdrop to the resolution of the case's heart. Poirot stood by the window, his silhouette framed against the storm, his mind already moving to the next steps. The Mary Celeste, too. It has given us its secrets. Hastings. Blake's confession is the key, but the lock is not yet fully turned. We must find the crew, and we must uncover the source of the opium. The sailor's death, it is avenged, but the shadows behind it, they still linger. Hastings nodded, his resolve firm. Where do we start then? Tracking down the crew. Poirot? Kane tapped the floor, a sharp, decisive sound. Oui, mon ami. We shall begin with the ports London, Calais, perhaps Amsterdam. The crew, they are scattered, but not invisible. And we shall send word to the authorities about the opium trade. Blake's masters, they will not escape the light of justice. As they stepped into the storm, the customs office fading behind them, Poirot's mind was alight with the satisfaction of a puzzle nearly solved. The confession had been won, but the Mary Celeste, too, still held echoes of its secrets, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until every note was heard. Chapter 11. The pirates' truthy storm that had battered Dover through the night had softened to a drizzle by morning, leaving the docks slick and gleaming under a gray sky. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat pristine despite the damp, walked with measured steps toward the Black Gull, the dockside inn, where Edward Red Carver was known to hold court. Captain Hastings followed, his face a mixture of satisfaction at Jonas Blake's confession and curiosity about the loose ends that remained. The Mary Celeste's too mystery was nearly solved, with Blake's admission tying him to Thomas Reed's murder. But Poirot's little gray cells were not yet at rest. The crew's whereabouts, the opium's source, and Carver's role shadowy, though it seemed demanded clarity. Poirot, Hastings said, adjusting his hat against the mist. Blake's confessed, and we've got him for Reed's murder. Why bother with Carver now? His initials in the cabinet seat could just be a coincidence, like you said. The man's a brute, but is he really part of this? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his unrelenting focus. Mon ami, a puzzle is not complete until every piece is in place. Carver, he is a storm cloud, dark and threatening, but not the lightning that struck Reed. Yet his presence near the docks, his past with the ship, his initials, they are threads that must be tied, or they will unravel our victory. The Black Gull was quieter in the morning light, its usual clamor subdued to a low murmur of sailors nursing their breakfasts. The air was thick with the scent of stale ale and fried fish, and the inn's weathered walls seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Carver sat at his usual corner table, his scarred face half lit by a flickering lamp, his broad hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. His eyes, dark and wary, flicked up as Poirot and Hastings approached, his posture stiffening like a beast sensing a trap. Monsieur Carver, Poirot began, his voice smooth but edged with purpose. We meet again, and this time with news. Jonas Blake has confessed to the murder of Thomas Reed, driven by fear that Reed would expose his opium trade. Your name, however, lingers in this affair, and I, Hercule Poirot, do not leave shadows unexamined. Carver's sneer was faint, but unmistakable, his voice a low growl. Blake, figures. That weasel always had a knife behind his smile. I told you, I didn't kill Reed. Whatever he got himself into, it wasn't my doing. Poirot seated himself opposite Carver, his movements deliberate, his green eyes piercing. Hastings remained standing, his hand resting casually near his coat pocket. Indeed, Monsieur Carver, Poirot said, you are cleared of murder, but not of suspicion. Your initials ZC were found carved in the captain's cabin, fresh and recent. You claim you left the Mary Celeste 2 months ago, yet witnesses place you near the Lisbon docks the night she sailed. Why were you there, and what was your business with Reed? Carver's scarred hands tightened around the mug, his knuckles whitening. I told you, those initials ain't proof of nothin'. Could be anyone's. As for the docks, I was in Lisbon, sure, but I wasn't skulking around the ship. I was settling a debt with a merchant, nothin' to do with Reed or Blake. Poirot's smile was polite, but unrelenting. A debt, you say. A convenient explanation, but one we shall verify. You and Reed, you had a history, Nan. A debt he owed you, a grudge that lingered. Tell me, what passed between you in the days before his death? Carver's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease crossing his scarred face. Reed owed me money from a card game, months back. I saw him in Lisbon, at a tavernot, the Rusty Anchor, another one, the Mermaid's Rest. We argued. Sure, he said. He'd pay me when the ship got back to Dover. I told him he'd better, or he'd regret it. That's all. Hastings, his patience thinning, interjected. An argument, and then he turns up dead. That's a bit too tidy, Carver. Were you on the ship that night, carving your initials to mark your threat? Carver's laugh was a harsh bark, startling a nearby sailor who spilled his porridge. Carve my initials? I ain't that sentimental. If I'd wanted Reed dead, I'd have done it face to face, not stabbed him like a coward. I wasn't on that ship, and I didn't kill him. Poirot's fingers tapped his cane, a rhythmic counterpoint to the drizzle outside. Face, you say? A man of your temperament, Monsieur Carver, does not strike from behind. Yet you were near the docks, and you knew Reed was troubled. Did he speak to you of the cargo, of the opium hidden aboard? Carver's jaw tightened, his gaze dropping to the table. He mentioned something about the cargo being off, but I didn't care. I wasn't part of Blake's game. If Reed found opium, That's his problem. I just wanted my money. Poirot's eyes gleamed with sudden intensity. And yet, you did not press him further. A man like you, with a reputation for violence, lets a debt slide so easily. Or did you go to the ship, perhaps, to confront him one last time? Carver leaned forward, his voice low and menacing. I didn't go to the ship. I saw Reed at the Mermaid's Rest. We had words, and I left. Next I heard, the ship was gone, and Reed was dead. That's the truth, Detective. Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, though his mind was cataloging every word, every gesture. The truth, Monsieur Carver, is a slippery thing, but I believe you in this, at least. Your grudge with Reed was personal, not fatal. But tell me, did you see anyone else that night? A cloaked figure, perhaps, moving toward the Mary Celeste. 2. Carver's brow furrowed, a rare moment of hesitation. A cloaked figure, maybe. There was a fella skulking near the docks, small, keepin' to the shadows. I didn't think much of it. Docks are full of types like that. Could have been Blake, now you mention it. Poirot's smile was faint but triumphant. Merci, Monsieur Carver. You have been most helpful, though you do not know it. Your truth. It clears one shadow, but others remain. As they left the Black Gull, the drizzle had turned to a fine mist, cloaking the docks in a ghostly veil. Hastings, his mind racing, turned to Poirot. He's telling the truth, isn't he? About not killing Reed, I mean. But those initials Z, see, they're still nagging at me. Poirot's cane tapped the cobblestones, a sharp, decisive sound. The initials, Mon Ami, they are a distraction, a relic of Carver's time aboard, or perhaps another's mark. Carver, he is a man of violence, but not of this crime. His truth confirms what Blake confessed. The cloaked figure was Blake himself, checking his opium or ensuring Reed's silence. Hastings nodded, though a trace of doubt lingered. So Carver's clear, and Blake's our man. But the crew there, still out there, and Blake won't talk about who's behind the opium. There's more to this, isn't there? Poirot's eyes sparkled in the mist. Hastings. Blake's confession is the heart of the mystery, but the veins run deeper. The crew, they are the key to sealing his guilt. And the opium trade stretches beyond Dover, two hands we have not yet seen. We must find these men, for their words will bind Blake to his crime and expose his masters. They paused by the quay, the Mary Celeste, too visible in the distance, its masts swaying in the morning breeze. Poirot's gaze lingered on the ship, his mind alight with the thrill of the chase. The pirate's truth, Hastings, it is a rough thing, but it is truth nonetheless. Carver is not our killer, but he is a witness to the shadows that moved that night. We shall find the crew, and, with them, the final pieces of this puzzle. Hastings, his resolve firming, straightened his shoulders. Where to next, then? London, Calais, wherever the crew's hiding. Poirot's smile was resolute. London, mon ami, the docks there are a haven for sailors, and whispers travel fast. We shall follow the trail of Blake's coin, and it will lead us to the men who fled the Mary Celeste too. The pirate's truth has cleared one path. Now, we walk another. As they turned toward the town, the mist swirled around them, a reminder that the Mary Celeste too still held secrets, but none that could withstand the relentless light of Hercule Poirot's little gray cells. Chapter 12. The case closed. The Dover docks lay quiet under a sky washed clean by the previous night's storm. The morning sun casting long shadows across the cobblestones and glinting off the restless waves of the English Channel. Hercule, his overcoat as immaculate as ever, stood at the quay, his sharp green eyes fixed on the Mary Celeste too, now towed to a secure berth under the watchful gaze of the Coast Guard. The ship, once a ghostly enigma, was now a silent witness to the truth uncovered by Poirot's relentless pursuit. Captain Hastings stood beside him, his face a mixture of relief and quiet awe. His notebook tucked away, its pages filled with the details of their investigation. Jonas Blake's confession had unraveled the heart of the mystery, and Edward Carver's grudging truth had cleared the shadows of suspicion. But the final threads, the missing crew, and the opium's source still lingered, demanding resolution. Hastings said, his voice low against the gentle lap of the waves. We've got Blake for Reed's murder, and Carver's in the clear. But the crew, those men are still out there, and Blake's clammed up about who's behind the opium. It feels like we've solved the crime, but not the whole story. Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile of satisfaction playing at his lips. Mon ami, a crime is like a tapestry pull, one thread, and the pattern emerges, but the edges, they require careful stitching. Blake's confession is the heart of our triumph, but the crew, they are the border that completes the picture. As for the opium's masters, they are a shadow we shall pursue, but not today. Today, we close the case of Thomas Reed. Their final task had taken them to London, where whispers of the Mary Celeste, the Second's crew, had surfaced in the smoky taverns of the East End docks. Poirot, with his unerring knack for following the trail of human weakness, had enlisted the aid of a local informant, a wiry publican named Jenkins, known for hearing the secrets sailors spilled over their pints. Jenkins had pointed them to a boarding house in Poplar, where two of the crew, sailors named Malone and Carter, had been hiding, their pockets heavy with Blake's bribe money. The confrontation had been swift but revealing. Malone, a burly man with a nervous tic, had broken under Poirot's piercing gaze, admitting that Blake had paid the crew to scatter after Reed's death. He told us the ship was cursed, Malone had stammered, said Reed's death would bring the law down on us all, gave us each a purse and told us to disappear London, Calais, anywhere but Lisbon. Carter, younger and more defiant, had confirmed the tale. We didn't know about the opium, not at first. Reed was always snooping, checking crates. When Blake told us he was dead, we figured it was best to run. Didn't want no part of murder. Poirot had listened, his mind cataloging their words, their fear, their greed. And the cloaked figure he had pressed, the one seen boarding the ship, did you see him? Malone had nodded, his eyes darting. Aye, once or twice, skulking around the hold. We thought he was one of Blake's men, moving the contraband. Never saw his face, but Blake was always cagey about him. This final piece had sealed Blake's fate. The cloaked figure, as Poirot had deduced, was Blake himself. Using a disguise to check his illicit cargo without arousing suspicion, the crew's testimony, combined with the blood-stained crate and Reed's note, formed an unbreakable chain of evidence. Blake was now in custody, awaiting trial for murder and smuggling, his empire of secrets crumbling under the weight of Poirot's logic. Back at the Dover Quay, Poirot turned to Hastings, his cane tapping the ground with a final, decisive rhythm. The crew, mon ami, they were the last thread. Their words confirmed Blake's guilt, and their flight, it was his design. The Mary Celeste, too, it is no longer a ghost, it is a ship avenged. Hastings nodded, though a trace of unease lingered. And the opium's source. Blake wouldn't talk, but someone's behind this, a bigger fish than a smuggler like him. Poirot's eyes gleamed with the promise of future battles. Hastings, there is a shadow beyond Blake, a hand that moves the pieces, but that is a case for another day. We have sent word to the authorities, Scotland Yard, the Customs Service. They will follow the trail of the opium, and those who profit from it will face justice in time. For now, we have done what we came to do. We have found the truth of Thomas Reed's death. The Mary Celeste, too, creaked as a gust of wind stirred its rigging, a sound that seemed almost mournful. Poirot's gaze softened, a rare flicker of empathy crossing his fastidious features. Poor Monsieur Reed, he murmured. He sought to do right, to expose a wrong, and it cost him his life. But his note, his cargo, it was his voice from the grave, and we have heard it. Hastings, ever the soldier, straightened his shoulders, a smile breaking through his solemnity. Another triumph, Poirot. You've done it again. A tangle of lies, and turned it into truth. I don't know how you do it. Poirot's smile was modest but radiant. The little gray cells, mon ami, they see what the eyes cannot. A ship may be a ghost, a crew may vanish, but a crime it is always human. And the human heart, it leaves traces that Hercule Poirot will always find. As they turned from the quay, the Mary Celeste too stood silent behind them, its mysteries laid bare. The docks bustled with life sailors shouting, crates thudding, gulls wheeling overhead, but for Poirot, the world was orderly once more, the puzzle complete. The case was closed, but the detective's mind, ever restless, was already turning to the shadows that lay beyond, waiting for the light of his reason to expose them.